All the roads are winding.
Welcome to the show, Elliott and Eliza. I'm really stoked about talking with you today, and I'm grateful for all the little nature spirits that connected us together. And even today, there was a Hawthorne synchronicity. I just feel the presence of the nature being so powerfully with us together, and really excited. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, so excited.
Totally. So let's go ahead with Elliott. Who are your ancestral lineages?
So my matrilineal line is largely Scottish, also Irish, and from England and France. And then my patrilineal line also has some Scottish, Irish, and Swedish ancestry. And on both sides, actually, when my family came to the States, they lived for several generations in Kentucky. So I have and my mom's side still lives there. So yeah, some Southern Kentucky roots.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. And how about you, Eliza?
So I always like to say Celtic and Viking, but like the actual, because that's a lot of what resonates very deeply within me. And a lot of the bloodline, though, the direct bloodline is Irish, Italian, a little bit of French and French Canadian, and then some Scottish.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. I'm like Viking and Celtic too. So I feel like I wonder like if our ancestors ever met or if we've common ancestors or something. Like I always think it's so cool because I mean, anyone who's from Ireland and Scotland and from Scandinavia, like there's got to be a chance that they were like mingling. I don't know. It just blows my mind. Yeah. So
I think so. I very much think so. And I think we're all coming back together in a way that's really interesting because we've also lived other lives and like we have this unique melting pot experience that, I don't know, the Viking energy in particular and feels like it's on a rise again. Like there's something to bring back from that era.
ooh, cool. I like that. So where in the world are you all? Let's start with Elliott again and then go to Eliza. And who are the people of the land that you live on or where you are right now?
Yeah, so I live in Durango, Colorado, and the people were the Ute nations, and also ancestral Puebloans before that. So there's a lot of really amazing archaeological sites around where I live. Yeah, really rich culture.
Cool, thanks. And how about you, Eliza?
I am in the Westchester, Connecticut area, so Westchester, New York, and then the Connecticut border. And it was the Wappinger tribe that actually was really originated this area.
Cool. And are they still around in the area?
There's small pockets, like I had mentioned before. There, when I was talking to you prior, there's the Native American festival that happens every year. So there are elements that still exist, and they're trying to, I think, bring that back more, so we can learn a lot more from them.
There's just in what I've learned about you both, and just from reading what you've shared and what we're collaborating on, what you're going to come offer through Earthspeak, y'all are both deeply attuned to the earth and nature spirits and to yourselves as part of nature. And I think I'm going to start this conversation a little bit personal with a story about something I just went through and why I think this relates to, I think this will bring up stuff about what you all carry, the medicine you carry, and parts of your own stories as well. And I'm curious to hear your response to this through the lens of your skills and experiences. So last Thursday, I went to the doctor. I went to 2 doctors in a row because, just got to get it all at the same time for me. I'm like, might as well stack it. Because I was experiencing 2 different symptoms in different parts of my body that were troubling and irritating. And even like, I was scared that they were meaning that there was other bigger problems happening. And both of the doctors were like, you look perfectly healthy. we see nothing wrong with you. There's nothing we can treat. There doesn't seem to be any apparent underlying reason for this other than stress. And I was like, oh, thanks. I was like, great. What you're saying is these symptoms are causes of stress in my everyday life, and inherently stresses of having to submit and be part of this machine system that values fish in the sea as dollars, that extracts life from our planet without returning it, doesn't complete the cycle, and requires us to submit our time and energy to feed this machine. Thanks. Let me just go fucking fix that. Yeah, like, let me just get rid of those stress. But okay, so in the time since we met last Wednesday, I think, and then this was on Thursday. And so I basically had a mental breakdown on Saturday. I was like, oh my God, we're trapped. We're all trapped in this system. Like I've had this breakdown before. It's like, we're trapped in this system, and the stress of it is unbearable to me at times because I love the earth so much. The earth is so beautiful. It provides all our needs, and life is still tough on earth. I mean, life without the system is tough. Like, you got death, pain, suffering, but here we are born into and having to participate in this system that honors profit over life. And the stress of this is real. And I think a lot of people who love the earth feel this. And so I'm bringing this because both of you offer, medicines that help to cope with this and also honor life, even as we live within this system. So Eliza, you do breath work, and Elliott, you work with herbal healing. So I'd love to just hear kind of your reaction to, us being part of this system that is destructive, and yet being people who are so devoted and in service to the earth and to life. And how do you I don't know, I'd love to hear like your own journeys or stories around that, and kind of how you found your medicine, if that weaves in, but don't need to make it too complicated here.
So I'll speak to that. This is Elliott. I think that this is what it means to be a human on this earth at this time. We've evolved alongside these plants and alongside nature in a different way than we are being asked to in these modern times. And I think that eco grief is something that is so real. And as somebody who's extremely sensitive, I've felt, in my younger years especially, I cried all the time, and I didn't know why I was crying. And then I would realize that this was this pain that I was feeling for the earth. And I think that while it is so important to feel those feelings and to really allow ourselves to cry and to feel the grief that exists in nature, besides, this sort of system that we're living in, this feeling of grief is really natural, normal, and we should be feeling it. However, there is a point where it's no longer constructive. So there's also this part of, I think that by feeling into the beauty that exists in nature, by being able to allow yourself to engage with the sensations of the wind on your skin, the feeling of ingesting a plant, or engaging with nature in some way, feeling into that beauty then provides us with more inspiration that then we can work towards our purpose of living in alignment with the earth.
So this is Eliza here, and to kind of add into that, I really hear what you're saying, Elliott, when you're like, this is just where we're at in humanity right now, and we have to be careful not to get caught in it, because the guidance I've kind of been receiving is that this is what it is right now. It's not ideal. Like we're being challenged, but it almost serves that purpose because it's pushing up against so many of us to deepen our own connection right now. We're having to lean into our own faith and our own ability to trust these magical forces that we can access and that they can help us rise above this. Because I think sometimes we're so focused on taking down the system that we forget it's not about taking anything down. It's about rising above it, because and elevating everyone and everything so that system just naturally doesn't even exist. But when we're so focused on it, what we focus on, we breed more of. So it's a challenging time for us because we are so sensitive and we have to honor that we feel it and that no, this wasn't working. Yet then it's almost like, well, how do we have these skills and tools to support ourselves and not getting caught in that story, but moving beyond it? And so I think all of us, like the disconnection, the world is feeling it so intensely right now. And what we all provide, I mean, even just this podcast right here, it's such a voice of connection. It's such a reminder that there's so much connection for us to tap into and to focus on.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. I mean, that's what comes up for me as well. And I went for a hike yesterday on the beautiful ridge tops near me that overlook the ocean. And I just sat there and looked down and saw like the birds flying, a hawk diving, but the hawk was below me. I was so high up. And I was just like, we have to witness and make space for this beauty and this connection as well, and honor what is here and what is alive. And just thanks for sharing both of your perspectives and insights. And yeah, and I hope the listeners who are feeling this are like, yeah, okay, you're not alone. You're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you.
I totally had a breakdown this last week, by the way, too. I don't know what's in the air, but I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know how. So I completely feel you on this. Just like, it's not an easy time.
Thank you for sharing that. 'Cause I feel like normalizing it. It's not like we don't need to always be in breakdown. And if you don't have breakdowns, it's not like you're wrong or bad or not doing it right. But like normalizing that sometimes these happen. But I don't know about you, and maybe it's too soon for you at the moment, but do you find that from the breakdowns come breakthroughs if you're paying attention to what's showing up, if you're really listening? Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, that's actually the exact guidance I got. It was like, you're calling this a breakdown, but it is a breakthrough. And for me, it was actually so appropriate because we were working with that energy of Hawthorne, and Hawthorne is all about how are you, that in between space, and really leaning into beyond the illusions, beyond the veils, what exists there. But what it was triggering for me was having faith versus fear. Like I was so afraid, and there is still a part of me in full transparency that's like, can I really trust the magic? Can I really believe? Like, and so I that breakdown showed me, and then it challenged me in a really positive way to lean in. And it was like, come on, lean in, ask for help. Like, don't be afraid to go for it. So I hear you on that piece of just, it caused a lot of awareness that I look through as a breakthrough. Yeah.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say it because I'm observing it. This astrologically, we just went through the Scorpio New Moon, and that is kind of also the message and energy of Scorpio is like to be able. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's like to let everything go into the darkness to then find the light. And so, just I'm observing that in this sort of space, and it seems very aligned.
I love it. Thank you. And as the phoenix rising from the ashes and just like death, Scorpio itself stands for so much of that, that which we other, and or deny, and that both pleasure and pain and death. And something that I see again and again, and this weaves back to my little story and you all being here, is that our part of what just drives me nuts about our society is that we're so linear, and Earth and nature are so cyclical, And in learning about, I studied soil science. And so I studied, I understand like how these nutrients return to the earth through death, and that it brings new life through composting and through, all these beautiful decomposers. Like they are our heroes. And yet, as I was studying about how to deal with stress, because like, okay, well, there's no way I can't like buy a golden ticket out of the system. And even if I do, like, it's like, we just have to live with it, And I was like, okay, well, how am I going to deal with this stress? And it was like the insight I came upon was you have to complete the stress cycle. And I was like, oh, duh. Of course, there's like a stress cycle. There's an inflammation cycle, a stress cycle. I do a lot of somatic healing, and that's all about completing the trauma response. And I'm like, okay, makes sense. So I've been learning about that. And then exercise is like number one. They're all like, exercise at least 20 minutes, because that actually tells your body, like it moves all of that through somehow. I don't know. It's body magic. But, and then breath work. And I was like, well now. Okay, so of course, now that's why we are doing some breath work, I guess. Spirit knew I had been calling in some breath work, and we had just hadn't seen, we really wanted to offer some breath work to the collective, but we just didn't find the person that like clicked. And we tried different people, just like, and then y'all reached out, and I was like, them. And so it's like this cool combination that you bring of botanical breathwork, of working with the nature spirits, of with the plant spirits, and working with the breath and ourselves. So I think I want to get a little bit into, before we get into that, I think I want to get into a little bit of your personal stories of, how you came to do the work you do. Because Eliza, you do breath work, and Elliott, you do, you own an herb shop and, help people with herbal healing. So whoever wants to start, when did you hear the call towards this, even if that call wasn't pretty? And what has, looking back, reflecting on this journey, where has it brought you to today?
Well, for me, I grew up around breath work. My uncle is actually Eliza's teacher. And so I grew up in these circles, these healer trainings, ever since I was like tinier, before I could walk. I was sitting in circle. And so it's been something that I've been around my whole life. And also the call of nature has been really clear in my life. I grew up in a rural part of New Mexico, and I'm an only child, and we had 10 acres that I just ran around on. I would hang out in my tree house for hours and hours playing games with fairies. Like, this was the way that I grew up. And so I think that really led me to where I am now, which has always been clear that I need to help people, and that I wanted to bridge plants and people to help people and to help nature. So that has taken many forms. I've led breath work on my own, and I've, so I followed that path a little bit. But then I also went to herb school. I made medicine in the herbal apothecary that I now own. And so now I own this herbal apothecary. And that is like a really beautiful way that I've been, I have the honor to offer medicine to my community and beyond. But now also with Botanical Breathwork that Eliza and I have been offering, it's this bridging of all of it. It's the breathwork piece where we are able to help people connect to their bodies, and also, bringing in the essence and the energy and the messages of these plants. Because by making medicine and providing medicine to people, it's a very physical thing. And I also really connect to the emotional and more spiritual, energetic side that these plants have to offer us and engage with us in that way. So
I love that. And when, we're over here at Earthspeak, we're very familiar with like connecting with plants spiritually. We, people, this is just accepted. People get it. So I'd love to hear more too of what your experience is like connecting on that spiritual level with a plant. Like, how do you sense it connecting with you or calling to you? Like, what, it's different for everyone. And I just love to hear how it's showing up for each person.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'll notice that all of a sudden that sort of plant will be around me. Either I'll start to see it in pictures or images. Sometimes I'll dream about plants, and that always is really, really clear that it's like, okay, I need to work with that plant immediately. It's like very clear insight in my dreams. But then also through writing, I feel like that's where I'm able to really dissect the information that I'm given. I'll set an intention before I start to write, and I'll just ask the plant to kind of speak through me. And I'm always surprised at what comes up. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I had no idea that that was what you wanted to share with me in this moment. But often, it'll be, I kind of hear and feel these voices of guidance that sort of direct me one way or the other. And then once I follow that direction, then it becomes more and more clear why that plant wanted to work with me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is Eliza, and for me, I've always had a really deep connection with the earth, and I'm really lucky because my mom was very much an instigator of that. She had a wonderful garden that, we grew up like eating fresh food from the garden. We lived in a beautiful place where we spent so much time outdoors. But it's interesting that, and it was always been like a saving grace for me. Like whenever life has become too much, I would go find my time in the earth. And so what I've loved about working with Elliott, though, and part of actually what instigated the kind of coming together of Botanical Breathwork, is that Elliott really helped me separate the different personalities from the earth. So I used to kind of almost look at the earth as this big conglomerate. And of course it is. It's this one big consciousness. But, and I was able to kind of separate the trees out. Like trees always really spoke to me in a very unique way. But then when I started hearing Elliott writing about these different plants and the personality she gave them, and like listening to the way she had developed such unique relationships with each individual essence, was so inspiring to me. It like made me want to lean in and really get to know all the different flavors that are here, that the earth has so much to provide for us. And so I really actually have to credit Elliott for helping me deepen my relationship individually with plants, before it kind of had just been this overarching. And so it's been so fun to work with her because I'm realizing how much each one has to offer and how they are such unique expressions. And so if you really take the time and start to engage with them, it's fascinating, and it's like developing a whole new relationship.
Love that. And then, so there's this amazing connection between Eliza. You learned breath work from Elliott's uncle, whose last name is also Elliott. So there's all these E's. We got the Elliots and Eliza. So, where did your breathwork journey start, or what led you to that?
So when I guess when I was when I was about 14, when I was in my early teens, I had an experience where I just got disconnected from my body, and I started, instead of feeling really comfortable in my skin, I kind of went down this spiral where essentially by my early 20s, I was at war with myself, and it was this inner turmoil, and it was a very, very dark space, and I was very disenchanted with life. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. My body was my nemesis, and I just didn't want to be here anymore. I was just like, what is the point of this rat race life? And I can't do this. And there was multiple times where I had a very strong calling of like, there's got to be more to life than this. And I kept putting that out there. And eventually I found my way to California, where I did get introduced to the breathwork meditation. And it was gradual at first, but essentially once I started to dive into it, it was kind of like I was tiptoeing around and then I suddenly dove full on in. And it was this amazing experience of just being able to start to let go of my guards and find enough of a sense of inner peace that I could be present to what was happening around me. And so when you're in that space, when the guards start to come down and you're in the moment and you're out in nature, that's when the magic starts to happen. And that's when I started to see things and I started to feel things. And, I would have experiences with hawks flying right by me. And suddenly it was like nature was coming out and playing. And that's something I actually very much learned from Elliott's uncle, David Elliott. He always said, he goes, when you open your heart and you lean in and you believe, like nature is so willing and ready to play and to engage with you. And so the breath work really, opened that up for me and re-inspired I'm like, oh my God, life is so fascinating. Like there's so much to be engaged there. And it really brought that re-enchantment back into my world. And then at these retreats, I got to meet Elliott and we just had such a synergistic connection right from the start. There was just something so kindred. And she, again, has been such an inspiration of staying and leaning more into that magic. Like when her and I are together, we've had just some of the craziest experiences happen where we look at each other, we're like, did that just happen? So it's been a really fun journey.
That's cool. And I was going to ask, how'd you meet? So you psychically answered that. And I guess, you guys sounds like y'all were hanging out at these retreats, connecting. And when did the idea for botanical breathwork pop into your all's consciousness? And how did that unfold? What is it and how did it unfold? And I think speaking to this process, when it first popped in, was it like a fully formed idea, or did you have to like follow the breadcrumbs, and has it evolved into what it is now? So kind of big question, but looking at like the creative process.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll jump in to start and then let Elliott add in. So it actually happened right around when COVID started, like March 2020 or around then. I've been doing themes for my breathwork, and the theme was synergy, and it was all about how when we breathe out, the earth breathes in, and how when the earth breathes out, we breathe in. It's this incredibly synergistic relationship that we have, yet we don't always honor this brilliance that's going on, and there's such a disconnect. So when I look at COVID, when I look at anything happening, I always kind of pull back and I'm like, what is the bigger picture going on? And it was so clear where it was like, right now we are being called to connect more deeply to ourselves, to our bodies, and to the earth so we can heal the earth and we can heal our bodies. And this was kind of all this emotion and thoughts spiraling around me at this time. And so Elliott was in a creative expression class, and she shared about, she read about dandelion, and she did what I kind of had mentioned, where she wrote about the personality. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I want dandelion to be my best friend. I love dandelion. This is so cool. And so I just had this feeling. I was like, Elliott and I can feel the synergy. And I was like, I reached out to her and I was like, do you want to collaborate on something? I love what you're doing. And so then it kind of became, we just started dialoguing, and it kind of moved forward where we had brainstorms on names, and it just became this group effort, this collective effort of what is today Botanical Breathwork. But I don't know, Elliott, you want to share more about what you do each month, like what with the plants and how that's so unique with the collective? Because Elliott kind of feels into the collective energy of what's going on when she picks the plants. If you want to talk more about that.
And I'm just going to mention, you're referring to the collective of humanity, not because we have the Earth Speak collectives, just so people know.
Good point, too. Yes, the collective energy of humanity.
Yeah, I'll feel into, well, every month it would be like, okay, we're going to do this class. And then next month, we're going to work with a different botanical. And I would kind of start feeling into it right before the class, so that we could provide it and tell the people like, okay, next time it's going to be this plant. And so I would just kind of wait a couple of days beforehand and ask, and be like, what plant wants to work with us this next month? And then I would be patient, and all of a sudden it would be clear to me. It would be sometimes between one or the other. Like, I would have two options, and then I would explain to Eliza like why I was pondering between the two plants. And she would be like, that one, because that seems really in alignment. So it also is a collaboration. And but this, yeah, I just would kind of feel into it. And it's so interesting because every month, it's like the more the month unfolds, the more it makes sense that botanical ally wanted to work with us. Like, different events would happen in, the world, that it would be like so potent and meant to be that we are going to be working with a plant that just really helped that whatever essence or situation had going on.
Thanks. Hearing this too, I'm curious about what are y'all's relationships with like working with spirit guides or spirits in general? Like, I mean, obviously we've talked about plant spirits here, but do you work with well ancestors or spirit guides or?
I do. I often will meditate and call in different sorts of guides. I always call in my well ancestors of good intent. I'm really clear about that. And then I'll call in nature spirits, my loving guardian nature spirits, and fairies, because I feel like they very much so, at least in my life, have opened many doors for me. They're like my little manifestors. And I'll also work with guardian angels, Archangel Michael, and Mother Mary. So those are some of, and I'll always call on all of the medicinal plants. And sometimes there will be a couple that I'm working with at a time, but in my meditations, I'll call in all of the medicinal plants, and I'll think about them in my little herbal apothecary lab that we have, and just like feel them so strongly holding space for me.
So yeah, I do work with my guides, very much with archangels. They've been a very strong presence. And Merlin is definitely for me, just, I don't know how that even happened or where. And it's just, he's been a very, very strong guide. But in full transparency, I still have trouble sometimes trusting that guidance. Like, this is a relationship that is so strong in so many ways, but I think it's interesting because like you can expand so much and you can have such profound experiences, and yet it's so easy to kind of come back and be like, but am I crazy? And so that's definitely been like a dance. And the breathwork's been so good because it really does help clear away all the BS and all the chatter, and it opens you into that space where you can lean in and trust. But it's definitely still a journey I am on.
Thanks for sharing, both of you. And, I see you in that. And it's so many people have that experience of, is that my guy? It's like, what just happened? Is that? And I think it's pretty common because, I mean, we've had millennia of this connection to the other world being denied, except for through the lens of specific religious constructs. And so, of course, this has been like, so, the doubt is deep, goes deep. And, but the Merlin, I love that. Can you say a little bit more about Merlin?
I mean, what do you want to know about Merlin?
I mean, like, I have never once been like, oh, Merlin's showing up like that. I love it though, but it's, so what kind of energy, maybe like what kind of energy and guidance or insight does Merlin bring? Even if you aren't quite sure and you're doubting it, if you were to describe what you think it is, then, what is that influence or presence like?
So he's very playful, but he's like a wizard energy. So he's like, I love systems. I love learning like the mechanics, like quantum physics, quantum mechanics to me is fascinating because I'm like, this world we live in is so cool. So, I'll receive kind of guidance around that, but it's like he makes sure to make it very playful. And I've never told anyone this. Is actually funny. So, sometimes that your mind can like get in the way of like, you're like, are those my thoughts? Is this, so what like will happen sometimes when he really wants me to get something is he'll do it like a poem, almost like he'll do it in rhyme, because it's like when you get into that rhyming and you kind of just drop into this rhythm, your ego, like your intellectual mind, it can't interject. Like it can't keep up. So a lot of times, like in order for me to like really hear what he's saying, he'll like throw in a few rhymes and poems. So we have fun. We definitely have a lot of fun.
I love that. I'm just going to reflect too that a lot of my experience with nature spirits is very rhymey as well. It's like they're just, and Elliott's nodding her head here, like a lot of rhymey, playful energy. I love that. Thanks for sharing about that. And that's really like, wow, I want to hang out with Merlin. Sounds cool.
Well, you want to hear a cool fact about him?
Yeah, of course.
Apparently, so he is an incarnation of Saint Germain, and Saint Germain is put in like what some people believe is ushering in the age of Aquarius, and so he's and that this is happening through the violet flame. And so, the violet flame is the purifying element that we are all experiencing right now. And like purification's a bitch, like it's not comfortable. And so, it's really challenging, but it's interesting because, so he's that incarnation. So he's very involved with what's happening right now, on the planet.
That is so rad. Thanks for opening that door. And, because like I got really I was like, ask about their guides, and I was like, okay. So I love this. I love all the botanical friends in the apothecary. Also, like owning a apothecary is so my personal inner child's like fantasy. Being in, I don't. Did you all ever have like as a kid? You're like, or maybe you, Elliott. You're like, yeah, I want to like put things in the mortar and pestle and like bubble little things and little, funny glass containers, and I don't now you like, of course it doesn't always look like that, but that's so badass. It's really badass. I don't know, you have anything you want to just say on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is like a dream come true. This is like for me to be able to help people by bridging plants and people, like this is it. This is what I've wanted. And it's also, I'm figuring it out with like the business side of things. It's not always, there's a lot that comes up with owning a business just in general that I think, is a big part of what I'm doing here. But yes, potions. I always remember making like mud pies, but we would make them like little plant mud pies, like with apricots on my land. Like I remember and almost like going to eat them, and then like, you don't really want to eat it because it's dirt. But anyway.
That's so freaking cute. Yeah. And I hear you on the business thing. Like part of my breakdown this week was like, how the fuck am I supposed to be in business when I'm so anti-capitalist at my core? I'm like, fuck this. It's like a constant dance. And there's so much to figure out all the time. But okay, something I really love that y'all touched on is in breathwork, and like you were working with these themes and they've blended together into botanical breathwork, is, especially bringing together plants and people with breath. Is like we really are breathing out and the earth breathes in, and the plants breathe in, and then they breathe out and we breathe in. And that is such a cool, like speaking of cycles, the cycles of air and how air moves through our bodies and plant bodies. It's just like so psychedelic. I love that the air we're breathing right now was like in the body of that tree over there, or that bush, or that flower. Like it is so cool. So I don't know. Can you just take us more into like what some of your botanical breathwork experience is, and what it might have awakenings or awarenesses it might have brought up in you, or people have reflected back to you? Just kind of like take us a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah. So, a big part of the breath work, it is actually circling back to your story in the beginning. A big part of it is to soothe our nervous system so that we relax out of that stress state, and we're able to be more open and receptive. And it's also then dropping us into our heart, because it's so much about, that's where our intuition lies, and that's also where we're able to use our imagination and play. And that's a big part of leaning into this relationship, is you want to be able to play and have fun, and be open to it. So that's a big element of the botanical breathwork, is to prepare people to be open, and also to really connect them with their bodies. We are at a time where, we're so disconnected, so much of society, and that's, illness is rampant, and that's not normal. We've come to accept something that's not. And so, we really are being called to, how do we drop back into our bodies? And a huge part of that is also connecting to the earth. It's like, it's so symbiotic. Like, when you connect to your body, you're able to be more present in the earth. And when you're in the earth, you're able to be more present in your body. Like, when you're in nature, you feel more alive, you feel more tapped in. And so that was really the overarching element of botanical breathwork, is how do we allow people to really go there and start to open, so they can have these beautiful experiences.
Yeah. And also, like, the way that people have reflected back, it's always so interesting. I know that our intuition is so powerful, and the amount of insight that people will say, like, oh, I saw this or I felt this when working with this plant, and I didn't talk about that in the beginning, but it is something that, like, people have done, or other people have said that that plant has whatever medicinal quality, or connects you to your ancestors, or in some way people are connecting to these overarching themes and essence of the plant through botanical breathwork, is, I think, a really beautiful thing. And also, at the end, Eliza always guides us through a sort of earth healing, where we envision that everybody participating in botanical breathwork is sending this, like, healing down into the layers of the earth, all around the earth. And there's something about that feels really, really potent and necessary at this time.
Yeah. Beautiful. And speaking of how many people are sick, in my research on dealing with stress, I read something like 110 million people a year die of stress-related illnesses. And I was like, what? What the fuck? Like, actually, wow. And I don't remember what they broke it down. It was like 2 people per second, or 2 people every 7 seconds or something. It was like some ridiculous. I was like, wow, okay, like, we're carrying a lot of stress. Like, this is a really stressful time. And I think, being on Earth has always been stressful for anything, because there's always eat or be eaten, a little bit of that in nature. But there's also cooperation. But still, as I think one of the trickiest part of how our society functions is, we aren't taught to deal with stress. We're taught that, like, oh, just achieve the thing and you'll be happy. And you don't achieve the thing. You don't achieve the amount of money or the car or the status or the whatever, and then you're happy. You're probably really stressed out and sick and unfulfilled. And returning to breath and returning to the earth, I feel like are such powerful ways to find what is actually fulfilling. And I just love, like, I think even just coming from a more, like, clinical perspective of what kind of, we have talked obviously a lot about stress today on my mind, but coming to breath work, and even to herbalism too, because both of them are, helping people. What kinds of symptoms or thoughts or feelings might people who could benefit from breath work be having right now? Like, how can someone be recognized, like, oh, this could help me?
Well, speaking of more of the illness, like you look at where so many, like I call our endocrine system and our nervous system the epicenters of well-being. Our gut health is right in there too, but our gut health is also very correlated to our nervous system, because almost all illness stems from an imbalance within the endocrine system and the nervous system. So what I love about breath work is that it activates both, it heals both. And so you're kind of getting to the root cause. We hear how wonderful meditation is, but with breath work, you're not only getting out of your mind and into your body, you're soothing the frenetic energy off of your nervous system. You're taking yourself out of that contracted fright state and you're relaxing and you're opening. Plus, you're stimulating your endocrine system to activate it so that all your ductless glands that regulate all the secretions in your body, they start to regulate out. Because when your endocrine system is off, when your hormones are out of balance, you just don't feel like yourself. You feel very lethargic, you feel very foggy, you feel very confused. When your nervous system is contracted, like that's where you feel the stress. You feel very shut down. You feel very closed off to life. And so this practice really is designed to do that. And to just touch really quickly too, with epigenetics, so much of the expression we're learning, very hard science, that so much of the expression of our genes is determined by the stress that we're dealing with. And so our nervous system is always giving us the feedback of, are we in a stressful environment or are we not? So when we're constantly stressed, we're telling our genes like express in an unhealthy way. But when you actually soothe the nervous system, you're giving your genes a chance to have a healthier expression, because we do have that much power and control over our well-being. But it's challenging. It's a lot to slow down and take the time to do this.
That is probably one of the most beneficial aspects of it too, is just the fact of slowing down to do breath work, to like lay down on your back and decide to push through. And it's not all easy, I think, is also another really important thing to bring up here. Like the breath work in particular can be uncomfortable. It can bring up a lot. And it's like how we're talking about, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's like you have this space to transmute so that you can feel the emotions that you need to feel, and then you can come into this space of being more open in your heart. And I think for me, that's been the most profound aspect of breath work, and then also botanical breath work, because it's like we can move through these emotions that maybe we're not dealing with, because in our busy lives, you need space to fully feel. And so this is like that space to feel, so then we can be more open, more receptive to our intuition and the messages of the plants and to the beauty that exists in this earth and in our bodies and in our experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And just people just don't make that space or don't realize how important that space is. Yeah. I'm curious to hear a little bit about maybe getting more personal, if you're willing. What have been what for each of you, what has been one of those phoenix rising from the ashes moments? Like, what have you had to face, and maybe what patterns came unraveled in facing it, and what did you gain in, what came in after that? And take a second, just think about, let something come to mind if anything does.
Well, for me, a moment, I would say it was actually when I was pretty far into the spiritual journey, where I was cracked open. I was really raw. I was having all these incredible out there experiences that were so prolific in so many ways. Yet I was so sensitive, and because I was so open and so raw, I couldn't handle this actual life that I was in. It was really challenging for me to face the physical reality before me. And it was this dance of like, I was like, I can't be here anymore. Like, this world is too harsh. This is too intense. And that's actually when I moved from LA to the mountains in Colorado, because I just got this very clear guidance that I needed the energy of the mountains to root me back into this world, because while it was so fascinating to go on the journeys that I went on, the truth is that, like, heaven on earth exists here, and we don't want to escape this reality. We want to use these tools to help us navigate it and to open to more. But if we can't function in our day-to-day lives, then that's a challenge. And so moving to the mountains was really, I mean, I went there with nothing. Like, I didn't have any money, didn't know anybody. And it was a really challenging time for me, but it helped bring me back into my physical reality and remind me that, like, I can handle this. And that was such an important message. Like, I remember I had to work like 2, 3 jobs when I was out there, and I was driving home at like 2 a.m. out in a blizzard. And it was after I'd worked like 16 hours that day. And I remember just being like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And something inside me was like, stop saying you can't do it, because you are doing it. And it's because you keep saying you can't that your soul is trying to show you, no, you're already doing this. Like, change that dialogue. So being in the mountains kind of really helped me remember that, like, it's important to be really powerful in this world too. And so much of that is connecting to the body and earth, and kind of finding that inner strength that we can handle what's before us right now, even if it's really challenging.
Yeah, and I feel like my experience is really similar in the way of this sort of oversensitivity and vulnerability. I think that my whole life I've been very open, and because of that, I've had just, a lot of emotions that I've had to navigate in this world. And so, and I think about it too, like, we're talking about like this energy of Scorpio and the Phoenix and all of that. And I have my moon in terms of astrology is in Scorpio. And so I feel like it's very every month almost. Like I feel like there's this sort of emotional breakdown that then I can come back from. And there's like, so in my life, I think a lot of it has been like trying to learn how to navigate the depth that I feel and then exist in this world. And baths are like really important for me, just like taking baths and like creating space for myself to like not be in sensory overload. But I think that from this space of going into those depths, I'm able to better be seen and show up in the world as the person that I want to be. And I'm a work in progress with all of that.
I really hear you with that. Yeah, that must be a wild ride. Heart goes out to all the Scorpio moons. So out there, I've got some Scorpio, but fortunately mine are like longer planets that go through. Yeah. So, yeah, I know the being a sensitive being in this world is real. How do we cope with it when the world has told us like your emotions are bad and wrong, and here we are creating space for them. And thanks for sharing your stories about that. And Eliza, I love with like the self-talk of like, I can't do it. That's such a powerful realization to be like, actually your self-talk is putting on the brakes when you are already doing it. Like, why don't you just take your foot off the brakes for a second and see what happens? Yeah. I'm curious to hear about what role creative expression might play in each of your lives, and what does it look like? How does it show up? What kind of impacts does it have for you? Whatever's coming through about that.
I can jump in here. So I had mentioned before that I was really disenchanted with life, and I was also very much a math and science person. I was very logical and linear. And after going on my first breathwork retreat, actually, I was like this is one of the most magical experiences of my life. Like, I will be back. And so I went back for the New Year's retreat. And on the New Year's retreat, it said there was a fire walk. And so I was like, awesome. Like, there's going to be a fire walk. Really cool. And in my mind, like, I'm a New Yorker, so I didn't know much. I was like, oh, we're going to walk around a bonfire and it's going to be awesome. Maybe we'll roast some marshmallows. Like, this is great. So in opening circle, like, a lot of people were talking about this fire walk. And I was like, wait a second, like, something going on here I'm missing, because like they're making a really big deal out of a bonfire. And so it wasn't actually until the next day that I was like, oh my God, like, we're gonna walk across hot coals. Like, I was like, no way. And I was like, I refuse to do this. And so needless to say, it spiked a lot of fear for me. And I was like, I'm not gonna do this, but I'll participate and whatever. So I'm in the line, I'm in the support line, and I'm holding space for other people that are walking across. And the next thing I hear, last call for walkers, and like something just took over me. And I was like, okay, I guess. And I just like went to the line and I was shaking. I was so afraid. And, you know, David kind of has you in the beginning there, and he's like making sure you're in a space to walk. And then he was like, right, dance your way across the coals. And I remember leaving his arms and being caught at the end, but I was so petrified that I actually blacked out for the walk because it was so much fear going on in my life. So after that, I just start sobbing, and I have this huge cathartic release, a very, very emotional release. And fast forward to the next morning, I was journaling, and here I am journaling. And that was the only form of writing I had ever done. And suddenly I start to get these kind of words start to kind of circle around in my mind. And this poem kind of just drops in out of nowhere. And I was like, I don't write poetry, like what? But I wrote down my poem. And fast forward, then that became the journey where I started to open up to my creativity. And that was such a big part of bringing me back to life and connecting me more deeply to the magic, and something so much bigger than myself was through the creativity. And on all these retreats, you know, David holds such an incredible space for people to express themselves and to feel safe sharing this. So the poems turned to songs, and then I started singing, and it just became this whole beautiful relationship that has been one of the most special relationships ever in my life. You know, that relationship with my creativity and expression.
Wow, I love that. And are you able to explain how one is able to walk on coals without getting burned? Do you have an understanding of that, or?
I can't give you like the technical term. Like, some people will be like, well, scientifically, like the way that it happens, like you can't actually get burned. And I'm like, that's not true, because people have gotten burned in walks before. And so I don't know, like, I don't know the science, but it was for me a very profoundly spiritual space where something does take over, and it is a beautiful way of accessing, moving beyond the limits we're told we have. So, but I can't speak to like the actual technicality of it.
That's cool though. I mean, it's pretty badass.
It was one of my favorite memories. Yes, it's a very cool experience. Highly recommended. With the right person. You have to be with the right person.
Definitely. This is not a drunk party trick, y'all. This is like Elliott, have you done fire walking? Done fire walking. Like, y'all gone fire walking?
Yeah, I've done a few. And I think that part of it too is like, before we walk, we all kind of get into a bit of a trance state of, and we all say like, my body will do whatever it must to let me walk on fire. And then also the vision is like, you always look up at a star and not look down at the coals you're about to walk on. So there's like a lot of like magical ceremony and ritual around the fire walk that we do that makes it a proper space for that really, intense experience. But I think that the other thing, like at my uncle's retreats, like there's always, like Eliza was saying, the space to share the creativity. And I love, Eliza, how you picked that, like you pieced it together of like the fire walk and the creativity, because that's like where the transformation I think really comes from in sharing our creative expression is like pushing through the fear, because it is really, really scary, especially those beliefs of like, people aren't gonna like me if I share this. It's gonna be too weird. It's like, it's all of these sorts of old beliefs start to come up when you come to the space to share this vulnerable creative expression. And just by doing that, there's like a really, really magical and potent thing that happens that you transmute to be in a more like loving space.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tack on real fast too with the firework when you were talking about it, because it plays so well with the earth and exchange. Something so incredible that I've learned from David and that happens at these firewalks is the exchange around what's happening. So he's literally exchanging with each piece of wood that has been cut down and being like, do you want to be a part of this ceremony? And, and he's holding it up to the energy of the sun, and he's asking, the energy to be released gently and lovingly. And so the whole time that this ceremony, all the prep, it sometimes looks like he's doing nothing. Yeah, that's how it's someone's really knows what they're doing, because behind the scenes and in his mind, there's this beautiful engagement with all the elements that are part of the process. And so that's something really special that then does drop you into this space to be able to walk across the fire and be safe and open and heal.
Yeah, such a powerful ritual. Cool. Thanks for sharing a little more about it. Elliott, do you want to share about your relationship with creative expression?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, writing, like I mentioned before, has been a real gateway to my intuition in a way that I've been able to convey what I feel in this world and the beauty that exists in the natural world, especially. And I'm also like, I grew up as a dancer, and I think that there's also that other piece. It's like the movement that can illustrate a really like feeling. And I feel like when I dance, I also can kind of transmute emotion, and all of these are just amazing vehicles for me to transmute, transform, and bring my visions into reality.
Yeah, thanks. And as you're saying this, I'm seeing all these methods of engaging with your body and creativity are just helping to unlock that ever-present flow that's always flowing through us. And it's just really beautiful. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I'm super stoked about our Botanical Breathwork experience coming up for collective members this November. And well, it is November already, but later this month. And I think we've already kind of touched in on it. And is there anything else y'all want to say about what that experience is going to be, or do you feel complete already with what we've shared about Botanical Breathwork?
I'd like to share a little bit more about Hawthorn. So the workshop is going to be based around Hawthorn, which is an amazing herbal ally that is this gateway between our world and the other worlds. In a lot of lore, it has a lot of stories about fairies and being a gateway to the fairy realm. There's a lot that Hawthorn offers us in terms of grounding amongst tumultuous times. And I think it's really fitting for the whole conversation that we've had too, because Hawthorn represents both birth and death in a lot of ways. Like it's kind of, it blooms at Beltane, which is this time of regeneration. It's the halfway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So there's like that gateway of rising energy and of birth. And then it comes to fruit usually around Samhain or Halloween, which is the cross quarter day between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So on these sides of the polarity, it represents also this time of death and decomposition and returning to the soil. And so I think that it's really beautiful that we can work with this energy to be a gateway to hold us grounded with like a loving embrace and play of the fairies, to express, like to be able to transmute, to release what needs to be released, and then come into some new rebirth as well. So yeah, we're very excited to dive deeper with Hawthorn in this way with everybody.
I'm excited, and it makes a lot of sense with the themes coming up right now with the Scorpio moon and with my own story and what y'all have shared. I think we're just right on time, y'all. Right in it. So what do y'all offer, and where can people find you? And of course, you each have your own things going on. So just describe your own things, and then how can people find more botanical breathwork as well?
So me, Elliott, you can find me on my website, dancingwillowherbs.com. And also we have an Instagram, Dancing Willow Herbs Co. And that's where you can purchase all of our lovingly made herbal products. We have a ton of different herbal formulas and tinctures and teas and salves and really beautiful medicines that are made with a lot of love and care. And I'm trying to have more classes through that space just in general of herbal classes and bringing different teachers, as well as teaching more on my own. But that is where we will be kind of presenting botanical breathwork events in the future. So if you sign up for either my newsletter or Eliza's newsletter, you will get our botanical breathwork information, but you'll be directed to Dancing Willow Herbs website to sign up for botanical breathwork events.
And me, Eliza Kane, you can find me over at elizarosecane.com on my website. And there I have different ways for you to experience breathwork, because it is such an experiential practice. So I do also have some free meditations there that are guided for you to give it a try. And there is also a space on my website that has botanical breathwork, so you can learn more about it. And then when you do sign up, it does direct you over to Dancing Willows.
Perfect. And of course, all that's in the show notes, everybody. And yeah, if y'all want to get a taste for this Hawthorn magic, botanical breathwork, come join the collective. And I'll be buying some Hawthorn berries from Dancing Willow so that I can partake of them while we have our breathwork. I want to call it a ceremony. I mean, I don't know. It just feels like a ceremony. I know we're not officially titling it, but as we journey with breath and Hawthorn, yes. So thank you all so much for just following your own magic and bringing that to us, to the people, to the planet, to the plants, and sharing a little bit of your story here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us and for holding space for this. It's such a beautiful collective that you hold together, and we're just really appreciative for being a part of it.
I feel truly honored that we can be involved with your community and just continue working with people and plants and just all working together to create a more beautiful world to live in.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free Earthspeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app, and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.